The biggest severe weather event of the entire year thus far is coming to the United States, and this will cause major problems, including widespread damaging winds, large to very large hail, and a bunch of tornadoes, which some of those could be strong and long-tracked. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about these two big severe weather outbreaks that will be taking place over the next 48 hours. And let's begin with the risk of severe weather for today, which has actually increased in probabilities, and the risk area has also grown. Our moderate risk of severe weather, which is a 4 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, is even larger than before. It includes most areas in Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, back into Tennessee and Kentucky. In addition to that, it includes St. Louis, Missouri, which may be the hotspot later this afternoon for damaging winds and even the tornado risk. The enhanced risk goes all the way back down into the Dixie Alley. Our marginal and slight risks go from Wisconsin and Minnesota all the way back down towards the Gulf Coast. Now, the main concern for today will be significant damaging winds, and this could be numerous to widespread at times in the Midwest. And we even have a hatched area outlined, which means that we could see damaging winds as high as 90 miles per hour in this region. So make sure you're hatching down trampolines, protecting loose line items, bringing your cars inside if you're able to. This threat will really ramp up as we go into the later afternoon and evening hours, and we'll talk more about the specific timing here in just a moment. But damaging winds are possible anywhere from the Gulf Coast all the way back into the Midwest. Our large hail risk will be mainly out of those initial supercells that develop, and that's mainly going to be along the Mississippi River Valley in eastern Missouri and western Illinois. We could see some hailstones as large as the size of baseballs. Make sure you are protecting your vehicle, and even if you're outside of this region, there is still a chance of large hail even across the Midwest into central Minnesota and all the way back down towards the Gulf Coast. And our tornado risk has increased for today. We now have a 15% chance within a 25-mile radius of a strong or even long-track tornado around St. Louis back into southern Illinois and southeastern Missouri. This is a moderate risk essentially for tornadoes, but there could be still strong and long-track tornadoes anywhere in the yellow or red, which goes all the way from southeast Iowa and western Illinois back over into central Mississippi and Alabama. Keep in mind that tornadoes are possible anywhere in the green or brown shaded areas today, so make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts, have a tornado action plan ready to go, and make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, as we'll be live later today covering this severe weather outbreak in depth with a bunch of different storm chasers in the field, in addition to a bunch of live cameras from the Midwest back into the Dixie Alley. Now, as we go into Saturday, we are expecting a full-fledged tornado outbreak in the southeast. We now have a large, moderate risk of severe weather in eastern Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, and almost all of Alabama is now included in this, and even a little sliver of the Florida Panhandle. And I do want to throw this out right off the bat. I do think we will end up seeing a high risk of severe weather somewhere in this region for strong and long-track tornadoes. The Storm Prediction Center has already warned that we will likely see multiple high-end tornadoes, which means that we could be talking about intense to perhaps even violent tornadoes tomorrow in the southeast. So you're definitely going to want to make sure, if you're anywhere in the Dixie Alley, that you are staying vigilant tomorrow. If you are in a mobile home, you're going to want to make sure that you have a plan ready to go to a sturdy structure well ahead of time, so you're not risking yourself in a mobile home when there's a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning, and it'll be really before it's too late to get out of that mobile home. But I also don't want you guys to just focus on the moderate risk, because there is a chance for strong and long-track tornadoes even up into parts of Tennessee and Georgia tomorrow afternoon and evening, and there's also a risk of severe weather that extends back up into Ohio and Pennsylvania. A little bit more of a conditional risk up here, but I do anticipate damaging winds and a few tornadoes to be possible. So this is obviously going to be a substantial severe weather outbreak, and more than likely a tornado outbreak from the southeast all the way back into the Ohio Valley. Now, before we go more into the probabilities of severe weather and as well as the timing for severe weather, I want to talk more about the sponsor of today's video. During substantial severe weather outbreaks, it's important to keep my body fueled and prepared for countless hours of radar analysis. That is why I trust AG1. With 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food ingredients, AG1 is my go-to for daily nutrition. I just mix 1 scoop of 8 to 12 ounces of water, add a couple of drops of D3 and K2 into the cup, give it a really good shake, and then I am set for the day. So good. AG1 is perfect for storm chasers and weather enthusiasts alike. Our non-stop lifestyle makes it tough to maintain a complete and balanced diet. Packed with vitamins, minerals, superfoods, and essential pre- and probiotics, AG1 is far more than just greens. It's a part of my daily routine that I look forward to every single morning. If you want to give AG1 a try, you can click the top link in the description below or scan the QR code on your screen now to get $20 off your first monthly purchase. Now back to the forecast. One of the biggest concerns for tomorrow's severe weather risk will be damaging winds. There will likely be at least numerous, if not widespread, damaging winds across the southeast, and this includes areas like Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Florida, where damaging winds could exceed 70 and even 80 miles per hour at times. So make sure you're hatching down any loose line items and protecting anything that might go flying, like a blow-up house or even trampolines. We also have another very large hail threat tomorrow, right around and just after lunchtime, from central Tennessee back into southern Louisiana, where hail once again could be as large as the size of baseballs. There will be a threat of large hail, though, anywhere from the Gulf Coast back towards Lake Erie, back over in northern Ohio. Now, in terms of the tornado risk, this is honestly one of the most concerning things that we are talking about for tomorrow. The Storm Prediction Center has maintained a large 15% tornado risk in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, but I personally think that we will end up seeing a high risk for tornadoes at some point over the next 24 hours, pending any sort of major changes to the forecast. And I honestly think we could end up seeing a 30, if not a 45% tornado risk added to Mississippi or Alabama with how favorable this environment is. So make sure that you are ready for this significant tornado threat in addition to wind and hail. Not everybody's going to see tornadoes, but you want to make sure that you are ready, as this is expected to be a high-end severe weather event in the southeast. We also could still see an isolated tornado or two even back up into Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. Wouldn't be surprised if our 2% tornado risk is a little bit larger by our next outlook, mainly for those in northern Ohio. Unfortunately, today's severe weather risk has been uptrending in the Midwest. We are anticipating a lot of wind shear, lots of instability, and overall a good amount of moisture here for there to be severe storms later this afternoon. But one thing that's really been popping out to me is this tornado threat. It has been on the rise. We have a lot of wind shear available here across many areas in eastern Louisiana, southern and western Illinois, and also back into Arkansas, which is going to really create a favorable environment here for tornadoes. Notice how our tornado parameter values by 7 to 8 o'clock are really up there across areas in southeast Missouri. So if we have any discrete supercells taking advantage of this environment, there will definitely be a few strong and even long track tornadoes in play from around St. Louis all the way back over into northeastern Arkansas and western Tennessee. Notice how this environment stays ripe and very favorable even by midnight tonight back over in southern Illinois, Tennessee, and also into Arkansas. So if we still have some discrete supercells out there, there will be an elevated risk for tornadoes. If it's more linear, our tornado risk will be decreasing as we go into the overnight hours. Eventually by tomorrow morning, we still have a tornado risk that's going to be in place, but I do think the convection here in the Ohio Valley will not be nearly as organized, so I don't really think this environment will be used up much if you're in Indiana. But back over in the Dixie Alley, there will be a chance for an isolated tornado or two in the morning hours, and we'll talk more about that here in just a second. And by the way, that could happen anywhere from really about midnight until 6 a.m., which is a very unfavorable time frame since a lot of us will be sleeping. So here's the timing for today, beginning with the Midwest around 4 to 5 o'clock. There will be some segments developing back over in Iowa and Missouri with mainly a damaging wind risk to start. This is also where there could be some embedded tornadoes in the line. But by around 6 to 7 o'clock, these storms are becoming very organized, mainly in eastern and northern Missouri, and even back up into Iowa, where there will be damaging winds, and if any of these storms can split away from the line, there will also be an elevated risk for a strong or even long track tornado. By 9 to 10 o'clock, these storms are still staying very organized, even through St. Louis into central and western Illinois, and then eventually as we get closer to midnight, these storms will start to fall apart, I think, by the time they get closer to Chicago, into eastern Illinois, and then eventually moving into Indiana. And then as we go into the overnight hours into early tomorrow morning, these storms are overall much weaker, and it's just some passing showers for most of us in the Ohio Valley before eventually we will see a rebound for some isolated severe weather tomorrow afternoon, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. And a little bit further down to the south and east, we are expecting storms across, again, St. Louis right around 6, 7, 8 o'clock this evening. There will also be a few storms that'll try to fire off even back over northeast Arkansas and southeastern Missouri. It's a little bit more of a conditional risk, but again, any storms that develop will be able to pose a threat for strong or even long track tornadoes, large hail, and as well as damaging winds. As we get past midnight, there will still be some storms out there in western Kentucky, Tennessee, and northern Mississippi. These could also pose a threat for an isolated tornado or two too, in addition to damaging winds. And then as we go into the early morning hours, storms are really clearing out of this area. Very low-end tornado risk existing in the morning hours in Kentucky and as well as Tennessee. But again, it'll probably rebound as we go into tomorrow afternoon. As we go into Saturday, we are expecting several tornadoes that could be strong and long-tracked, and it's all thanks to the amount of wind shear and instability that we have available even during the late morning and afternoon hours in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. And this is going to continue to stay very favorable even as we go into the evening hours. We anticipate that there will still be some strong and long-track tornado potential even into the evening across Alabama, and this will eventually move up into parts of Tennessee and Georgia as we go into the mid to late evening and even into the overnight hours. So definitely make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts. If you're further off to the north into parts of the Ohio Valley, the tornado risk is a lot more conditional, and it'll be mainly during the mid to late afternoon hours where a couple of storms will try to fire off and maybe produce an isolated tornado or two. For the severe weather timing in the southeast, there will be some storms out there very late this evening, mainly in southern Mississippi and eastern Louisiana. This will be mostly happening after midnight tonight, where some damaging winds, some hail, and even a couple of tornadoes will be a possibility even as we go into the overnight hours. And I honestly think our greatest concern for this will be in this narrow corridor in southern Mississippi around Hattiesburg back into southern and central parts of Alabama. So something to watch for overnight tonight. Make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts, as this will be mostly happening after dark tonight. Eventually, as we go into early Saturday morning, there will still be some storms out there, but nothing really that organized. A low tornado risk will continue into the morning hours on Saturday, but eventually as we get closer to 12 and 1 o'clock, that is when a bunch of supercells will be trying to fire off in eastern Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, and even back over into western Alabama, where there will be a threat here for several tornadoes. And the HRRR is just showing tons of rotating storms here across this entire segment across eastern Mississippi by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And if this ends up happening, we are talking about a full-fledged tornado outbreak with a bunch of discrete supercells lined up here in eastern Mississippi. And a lot of computer models are showing this, so that's not a good sign for right now. But let's just hope that this downtrends to some facet over the next 24 hours, because otherwise, I think Saturday is going to be a very long day. By the mid to late afternoon hours, severe weather will continue. The tornado risk and wind threat will continue mainly in northern and central Alabama and Mississippi. There will continue to be some supercells that are a little bit further to the south and east of that will still be producing the threat there for tornadoes and damaging winds, and this threat will continue as we go into the evening hours across the southeast. So tomorrow will be a very long day in the southeast. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We will be live later today covering severe weather, and if you have any further questions, you can definitely let me know in the live stream, and I'll try my best to answer it for you. Back over in the Ohio Valley, as we go into tomorrow morning, it's going to be pretty quiet. As long as the convection can move out fast enough from the storms that we'll be seeing overnight tonight, we'll likely see at least a couple of storms fire off around and just after lunchtime. The tornado threat will be the greatest during the early to mid-afternoon hours, maybe even trickling into the late afternoon hours in Indiana and Ohio, but it's going to become pretty messy, I think, as we go into the late afternoon and early evening, with mostly just rain that could actually lead to some isolated flooding. Now, we don't just have a risk of severe weather, but we also have a risk for fires. There are a ton of red flag warnings in effect for today across Missouri all the way back into Texas, and we also have wind advisories and high wind warnings in effect in the Midwest and back into the northern plains, in addition to some winter storm watches that will become winter storm warnings ahead of some snow and even some blizzard-like conditions. There won't just be fire weather conditions, but there's also a potential for high winds that could even lead to dust storms across the southern plains today. This is what it looks like right around lunchtime. We are going to have widespread wind gusts around 60 to 70 miles per hour in Oklahoma and North Texas, and this will eventually leak into Missouri and Kansas as we go later into the afternoon hours, posing a significant risk for not just fires, but also even some dust storms. So definitely something you're going to want to watch out for today, mainly in Oklahoma and also in the Texas Panhandle. Winds will die down a little bit as we go into tomorrow in the southern plains, but they will still stay strong back over in the Midwest with wind gusts around 30 to 50 miles per hour. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below and click the bell icon so you're notified when we go live later today for full-blown severe weather outbreak coverage, and we'll be doing the same exact thing tomorrow. And a huge shout out to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to go check them out. It's the top link in the description below. By supporting them, you're also supporting our channel and what we do here with all the severe weather coverages that we do in addition to all the videos. I really do appreciate their support, and we'll see you guys all again in our live stream later today and as well as tomorrow.